Hello everyone, I am Tanushri Chatterjee. Today we are going to talk about the chapter of political science, working of institutions. Democracy is not just about people electing their rulers. In a democracy, the rulers have to follow some rules and procedures. They have to work with and within institutions. This chapter is about working of such institutions in a democracy. We try to understand this by looking in the manner in which major decisions are taken and implemented in our country. We also look at how disputes regarding these decisions are resolved. In this process, we'll come across three institutions that play a key role in major decisions: legislature, executive, and judiciary. What all we'll be covering today is Office Memorandum, Mandal Commission, the decision makers, oppositions against the Mandal Commission, what is the need for political institutions, why do we need a parliament, the two houses of a parliament, functions of parliament, political executive and permanent executive, prime minister and cabinet ministers, president, judiciary, Supreme Court, and High Court. What is exactly a office memorandum? A communication issued by an appropriate authority stating the policy or decision of the government. A government issues hundreds of orders every day on different matters. A office memorandum was the culmination of a long chain of events. So whatever decision appropriate authority takes, regarding that decision, the paper, the order of the government, it is known as the office memorandum. Who are the decision makers in our government? Decisions are made by the government. President of India is the head of states and all decisions are taken in his name. Prime Minister is the head of government and actually exercises government power. Decisions are taken in cabinet meetings. Parliament, as you all know, consists of two houses, Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. Prime Minister must have majority in Lok Sabha. So what exactly is this Mandal Commission? The Government of India in 1979 appointed the second backward class commission. It was headed by BP Mandal, hence popularly it is known as by his name Mandal Commission. It was asked to determine the criteria to identify the socially and educationally backward classes in India and recommended steps to be taken for their advancement. The commission gave its report in 1980 and it made many recommendations. One of these many important recommendations was 27% of government jobs to be reserved for the socially and economically backward classes, that is SEBC. The benefit of job reservation extended from SC to ST to a third category called SEBC introduced. These reports and recommendations were discussed in the parliament. Many parties and parliamentarians kept demanding for the implementation of these demands. So finally in 1989, Lok Sabha election, the Janata Dal party promised that if they will get a chance to form the government, they would implement the demands. Janata Dal formed the government and its leader VP Singh became the prime minister and took different measures to implement the commission report. Finally, it was implemented. Official Memorandum OM number 36012-3190 was born on April 13, 1990. But even then, there was a lot of opposition against the Mandal Commission. Some people felt that reservation was against the principle of equality. Newspapers and magazines were full of different views and opinions related to the issue. It affected thousands of job opportunities. Some people and associations opposed this and filed the case in the courts. So there were so many cases filed, so many petitions filed that the Supreme Court of India bunched all these cases together. This case was finally known as Indira Sahane and others versus Union of India case. 11 judges of Supreme Court heard the arguments on both the sides. Some persons and associations opposed this order filed by a number of cases. By a majority, the Supreme Court judges in 1992 declared that this order of Government of India was valid. At the same time, Supreme Court asked the government to modify the original order. It said that the well-to-do persons among the backward classes should be excluded from getting the benefit of reservations. Accordingly, the Department of Personnel and Training issued another office memorandum on September 8, 1993. This dispute thus came to an end and this policy has been followed ever since. So now you all know how in a particular matter the government, the legislature, the executive plays an important part to take the decision. These are the decision makers of our country. So what is the need for political institution? In India, the political institutions are arranging and carrying all the tasks of the country. In modern democracy, these arrangements are known as institutions. Working with institutions are not easy. It has a lot of rules and regulations. It leads to delays also. We need political institutions to implement, and regulate rules for the country. However, no work can be done without the institutions in a democracy. What are the branches of the government? As we discussed in the beginning, what are the branches of the government? The legislature, the executive, and the judiciary. In India, there are three important political institutions: Parliament, that is legislative, the Prime Minister, and the cabinet ministers that take all important policy decisions. Executive. The civil servants working together are responsible for taking steps to implement the minister's decision. Judiciary. Supreme Court is an institution where disputes between citizens and government are finally settled. Why do we exactly need a parliament? The parliament exercises political authority on behalf of people in many ways. Parliament is the final authority for making law in any country. It can also change existing laws or abolish existing laws and make new ones in their place. Parliament exercises control over those who run the government. No decision can be taken without the support of Parliament. Parliament also controls the money matters. Parliament is the highest forum of discussion and the debate on public issues and national policy in any country. It can seek information about any matter. Parliament in all democracies and assembly of elected representatives exercise supreme political authority on the behalf of people. In India, such a national assembly is called as parliament. This is how the definition goes. What is a legislature? The body of elected representatives at the state level is called as legislature or legislative assembly. Which are the two houses of parliament? Parliament plays a central role in democracies. The large countries divide the role and powers of the parliament in two parts. They are called as chambers or houses. One house is usually directly elected by the people and exercises the real power. The second house elected indirectly and performs some special functions. They were looking for the interest of various states, regions, and federal units. Our parliament has two houses. Lower house, it is called as Lok Sabha or House of People, and upper house, it is called as Rajya Sabha or Council of States. What is Lok Sabha or the House of People? It is directly elected by the people and exercises the real power. The maximum strength of House is 552 or 530 members elected from the states and 20 members from the union territories. 2 members are nominated by the President of India from the Anglo-Indian community. The present membership of Lok Sabha is 545. What is Rajya Sabha or Council of States? It is usually elected indirectly and performs some special functions. The most common work for the second house is to look after the interest of various states, regions, and federal units. It has not more than 250 members. 12 of Rajya Sabha members are nominated by the President from persons who have earned distinction in the field of literature, art, and science and social service. Rajya Sabha is a permanent body. One third of the members retire every 2 years. At present, 245 members are there in Rajya Sabha, distributed among different states and union territories. What is the function of a parliament? On ordinary bills, both houses have equal power. In case of a deadlock, a joint sitting of both houses is called where Lok Sabha has numerical majority. On many matters, Lok Sabha enjoys more power than Rajya Sabha. Rajya Sabha can delay it by only 14 days. Lok Sabha controls Council of Ministers through no confidence motion. Rajya Sabha does not have this power. What do we mean when we say political and permanent executive? The one which is elected by the people for only a specific period of time is called as political executive. It signifies the government of a country. The one where people are appointed on a long-term basis is called as permanent executive or the civil services. People working for the civil service are called as civil servants. What is the difference between political and permanent executive? Political executives who are elected by the people for a specific period of time are called as political executive. The permanent executives are salaried with civil servants who are appointed on a long term. What is the example? Political leaders like Prime Minister, Council of Ministers are a part of political executive. Persons working in civil services, that is IAS, IPS, IFS, are a part of permanent executive. They remain in office only so long as they command the confidence of the majority of members in the parliament, whereas the permanent executive can remain in office even when the ruling party changes. Their tenure of the office is fixed. They are answerable to people for all the consequences of the decision. The permanent executive is not answerable to the people. The political executive are more powerful. They can take all the final decisions. Whereas in the permanent executive, they are less powerful. They do not take decisions. Instead, they assist political executives in carrying out the day-to-day administration. What is a prime minister and what is his role? The prime minister is the most important political institution in the country. The president appoints the prime minister. The prime minister does not have a fixed tenure. He continues in power so long as he remains the leader of the majority party or coalition. He chairs cabinet meetings. He coordinates the work of different departments. His decisions are final in case of disagreements arise between departments. He exercises general supervision of different ministries. All ministries work under his leadership. The Prime Minister distributes and redistributes work to the ministers. He has the power to dismiss ministers. When the Prime Minister quits, the entire ministry quits. Thus, if the cabinet is the most powerful institution in India, within the cabinet, it is the Prime Minister who is the most powerful. Who are cabinet ministers? Council of Ministers is the official name for the body that includes all the ministers. It has usually 60 to 80 ministers of different tasks. Usually top level leaders of the ruling party who are in charge of the major ministries, they become the cabinet ministers. Usually the cabinet ministers meet to take decisions in the name of Council of Ministers. Cabinet is thus the inner ring of the Council of Ministers. It comprises of 20 ministers. Ministers of state with independent charge are usually in charge of smaller ministries. They participate in the cabinet meetings only when they are specially invited. Ministers of state are attached to and required to assist cabinet ministers. The cabinet work as a team. No minister can openly criticize any decision of the government, even if it is about another ministry or department. Every ministry has secretary who are civil servant. These secretaries provide the necessary background information to the ministers who take decision. How exactly is our president elected? The president of India is elected not directly by the people. All the members of the parliament and members of assembly elect him. A candidate standing for the post of president had to get majority of vote to win the election. This ensures that the president of India can be seen to represent the entire nation. What are the powers of a president? The president of India is the head of state. He exercises only nominal powers. He is like the Queen of Britain, who functions are to a large extent ceremonial. The president supervises the overall functioning of all the political institutions. All government activities take place in the name of president. All laws and major policy decisions of the government are issued in his or her name. All major appointments are made in the name of President. These includes the appointment of the Chief Justice of India, the judges of the Supreme Court and the High Courts, the governors of the state, the election commissioners, ambassadors to other countries, etc. All international treaties and agreements are made in the name of President. The President of India is the Supreme Commander of the Defense Force of India. What are the limitations of the president? The president is the head of state and not the head of government. Therefore, he exercises only nominal powers, and that too on the advice of Council of Ministers. The president can ask the Council of Ministers to reconsider its advice. But if the same advice is given again, he or she is bound to act according to it. A bill passed by the parliament becomes a law only after the president gives assent to it. If the president wants, he or she can delay this for some time and send the bill back to the parliament for reconsideration. But if the parliament passes the bill again, he or she has to sign it. What are the appointments made by the President of India? He or she appoints the Chief Justice of India, the judges of the Supreme Court and the High Courts of States. He appoints the Prime Minister of India and other ministers on the advice of the Prime Minister. He appoints the governors of the states as well. He appoints the election commissioners and the ambassadors to other countries. When and how does the President exercise his discretion? When a party or coalition of parties gets a clear majority in the elections, the president has to appoint the leader of the majority party or the coalition that enjoys majority support in the Lok Sabha. When no party or coalition gets a majority in Lok Sabha, the president exercises his discretion. The president appoints a leader who, in his opinion, can muster majority support in the Lok Sabha. In such a case, the president can ask the newly appointed to prove majority in the Lok Sabha within a specified time. Now, what do we mean by judiciary? All the courts at different levels in the country are collectively called as judiciary. It is independent and powerful institution and is considered essential for democracies. The Indian judiciary consists of a Supreme Court for the entire nation, High Court in the states, District Court, and the courts at local level. The judiciary in India is also one of the most powerful in the world. What are the powers of judiciary? The judiciary in India is one of the most powerful judiciary in the world. India has an integrated judiciary. It means that the Supreme Court controls the judicial administration in the country. What does judiciary do? It settles the disputes between citizen and the government, between two or more states, between government at the union and state level. It also free forms legislature and judiciary. The judges do not act on the direction of the government or according to the wishes of the party in power. That is why all the modern democracies have courts that are independent of the legislature and the executive. It interprets the constitution of the country. The Supreme Court and the High Court have the power to interpret the constitution of the country. It also does a judicial review. They can declare invalid any law of the legislature or the actions of the executive, whether at the union level or the state level, if they find such a law or action is against the constitution. Thus, they can determine the constitutional validity of any legislation or action at the executive of the country when it is challenged before them. This is known as judicial review. If the court finds that a law or an order of the executive disobeys the provisions of the Constitution, it declares such a law or order null and void. It is also a guardian of fundamental rights. The powers and independence of the Indian judiciary allow it to act as the guardian of the fundamental rights. That is why the judiciary enjoys a high level of confidence among the people. Public interest litigations or PIL. Anyone can approach the court if public interest is hurt by the actions of the government. Prevent the misuse of government power. The courts intervene to prevent the misuse of government's power to make decisions. They check malpractices on the part of public officials. That's why the judiciary enjoys a high level of confidence among the people. Who appoints or removes the judges? The judges of the Supreme Court and High Court are appointed by the President on the advice of the Prime Minister and in consultation with the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. The senior most judge of the Supreme Court is usually appointed as the Chief Justice. Once a person is appointed as a judge at Supreme Court or High Court, it is nearly impossible to remove him or her from that position. A judge can be removed only by an impeachment motion passed separately by two-thirds members of the two houses of the parliament. It has never happened in the history of Indian democracy. What is the hierarchy of judiciary in India? The Constitution of India is the supreme legal document in the country. There are various levels of judiciary in India, different types of courts. They form a strict hierarchy of importance in line with the order of the courts in which they sit, and with the Supreme Court of India at the top, followed by high courts of respective states with district judges sitting in district courts and magistrate of second class and civil judge junior division at the bottom. Courts hear criminal and civil cases, including disputes between individuals and the government. The Indian judiciary is independent of the executive and legislative branches of the government. This brings us to the end of the chapter. I hope this was helpful. Thank you.